Thank you to Natasha for setting up the motivation both for why we used Mycoides and Syn3 as model membrane systems, and also for why we would want to minimize a living membrane and what that can tell us about simple living systems. So I'm going to jump right into it and ask what drives remodeling in mycoplasma membranes. So we know that the membranes are complex and dynamic, but what's actually going on when they're able to swap out and in different lipids? Specifically, how can they change the lipid species that they have access to? So remodeling in mycoplasma mycoides depends on acyl chain access. When mycoplasma and Syn3 have access to acyl chains, they can synthesize the PG class of lipids, and then from there go to the cardiolipin class of lipids. So already they can get a wide diversity of lipids in their membrane just when they're fed free fatty acids. But what happens when they're not fed fatty acids? What happens when they can only scavenge phospholipids? Luckily, they have lipase activity, so they can get free fatty acids from phospholipids, also generating lyso-PCs, and they can then use those free fatty acids to remodel the original phospholipids, swapping the saturation or length of the acyl chains on those phospholipids. And what this means is that from a very simple fatty acid source, mycoplasma and Syn3 can synthesize a diversity of different lipids that they can use to remodel their membranes. And that's a fundamental takeaway. And then, of course, once they've synthesized those lipids, lipase activity can allow them to cleave fatty acids from those lipids, replenishing their fatty acid pool. But it all depends on having access to acyl chains. That's how mycoplasmas achieve membrane complexity. And what this means is that we can actually feed mycoplasma and Syn3 simple defined lipid diets. So moving away from FBS and feeding them diets as simple as only 2 lipids, in this case, a POPC and cholesterol. But because of this acyl chain scavenging ability, from a simple diet, they can achieve a relatively complex membrane composition. And I just want to highlight that we know acyl chain scavenging is occurring when we see the synthesis of PG and cardiolipin, because that can only be achieved when mycoplasma has access to a source of free fatty acids, which in this case only works if it's cleaving the acyl chains from the phospholipid it's been fed, because there's no other source of fatty acids in the diet we feed it. So what does this look like in an assay? This is TLC data where we have mycoplasma fed on an FBS diet, and then we switch it over to a POPC plus cholesterol diet. And after the first passage, when the cells are still unadapted, we actually don't see cardiolipin and PG synthesis. But after the cells are adapted to the new diet, we do see the synthesis kicking in, which shows that there must be acyl chain cleavage happening. They must be scavenging acyl chains from the POPC. And we can look in more detail using lipidomics, where we can see that from a diet of only 2 lipids, and this is mole percent data, they achieve a membrane composition of 28 different lipids. So acyl chain scavenging gives us complex membranes from simple inputs. So the question then is, can we go simpler? I also want to note that they do retain a large fraction of the phospholipid they're fed, but then they scavenge acyl chains from a fraction to synthesize a diversity of other lipids. So the question was, can we develop a simpler living membrane? And to do that, we turned to ether lipids. These are synthetic lipids that have ether rather than ester linkages, and mycoplasma and Syn3 don't have lipases capable of cleaving these ether bonds. So what we should see is that from a diet of only 2 lipids, we achieve a membrane with only 2 lipids. And this is the TLC showing the same thing, that even after a period where the cells are adapted to the new diet, which you can tell because sphingomyelin has been diluted out, we don't see any cardiolipin or PG production. And this is what we see. We've gone from an input of only 2 lipids to a living membrane composition of only 2 lipids. So we've essentially removed the ability of mycoplasma to change the composition of its membrane when it comes to the lipid species there. It can only change the relative abundance. And this is the simplest known living membrane. So the question then is, does that affect growth? Does a minimal membrane and the membrane we're remodeling is curtailed affect growth? And the answer is yes, to a significant degree. So then the question is, well, what's going on and why is growth affected to this degree? And one answer is it could be lipid class complexity, because when the cells have access to acyl chains, they can synthesize cardiolipin and PG. But when we just give them the diether PC, they don't have access to those lipid classes. So first we wanted to confirm that if it was or wasn't access to lipid class complexity. And we did this by feeding the cells diether POPG, because the cells can still synthesize cardiolipin from a diether PG, because phospholipase D acts on the head group rather than the acyl chains. So we can recover some of that lipid class complexity without giving them access to acyl chain complexity. And we saw that not only did we not recover growth, growth was actually worse. And what we did next was confirm that even if we fully bring back the lipid classes that it would hypothetically have access to if it could remodel, cardiolipin, PG, and PC, we still don't recover growth. So then the next question was a confirmation that there wasn't something about the ether lipids that was harming the cells. And so we switched them from a diether POPC diet to just a POPC diet, but we looked at their growth after the first passage when they still weren't adapted, so their acyl chain scavenging capacity hadn't yet been activated. We saw that there was slightly better growth, but still nothing like the growth when they had access to a pool of acyl chains. So then we said, okay, what if we don't feed them a phospholipid? What if we don't give them access to the PC class, but we do give them free fatty acids? And we found that growth was not fully recovered, but was significantly recovered when we gave them access to acyl chain complexity compared to lipid class complexity. So then we said, well, is this just due to their ability to remodel? So what happens if we take the membrane extract from cells that have acyl chain complexity and have 28 lipids in their membrane, and we just feed that directly to cells that were on a diether diet? By which I mean we feed them 28 different lipids, but because we're studying their growth after the first passage, they don't have the ability to remodel the acyl chains or scavenge the acyl chains from that diet. So they're forced into the diet we fed them, but we're recovering the complexity of the diet they can make for themselves with acyl chain scavenging and acyl chain remodeling. And we can see that we again don't fully recover growth, but we do recover growth even beyond the 2 fatty acid diet. And this shows us that when it comes to membrane features, for Mycoplasma mycoides to have access to free fatty acids that it can use to bring acyl chain complexity to the lipids in its membrane is the most important feature, above that of lipid class complexity. And it also shows us that we're able to tune the membrane from a membrane of only 2 or 3 or 4 lipids in the membrane up to a membrane with 28. And of course, we're limiting ourselves to lipid diets of only 2 inputs. So we could tune and scale even further if we added in other lipid classes such as sphingomyelins. So this is demonstrating the ability to achieve simple living membranes, tune the complexity of the membrane, and also demonstrate that we can identify which lipid species are the most important to cell fitness. And for my last minute and a half, I'm going to turn to work in Syn3 and also exciting work about what we can do in a system where we can force cells to take up the lipids we want them to, even if they don't necessarily want to. So there's something called the Great Lipid Divide. And what that is that bacteria and prokaryotes and eukaryotes have G3P lipids, while eukaryotes, or archaea, my apologies, have G1P lipids. And this means these lipids are chiral enantiomers. So the molecular structure is the same, but in one, the head group is on the 3 carbon of the glycerol backbone, and in the other, it's on the 1 carbon. And for some reason, life has diverged in this aspect, and we're not sure why. But we now have a system where we can force an organism that wants G3P lipids to be fed on a diet exclusively of G1P lipids. And what we found in Syn3 is a significant reduction in growth when the cells are fed the enantiomeric lipid, and interestingly, an even greater reduction in growth when cells are fed the racemic mixture. And so that's the effect of the lipid on the growth of the cell. But now we wanted to look at the effect of these enantiomeric lipids on the biophysical properties of the cell. So one assay we can do is an osmotic sensitivity assay, where essentially we hypoosmotic shock the cells and see which fraction lyse. And we see that the enantiomer and the racemic mixture increase osmotic sensitivity. And finally, we can also look at permeability, and which is a small molecule. We see how quickly it diffuses into the cell, and we can see that the two diets where the enantiomer is present are much more permeable. So by forcing cells to feed off of a lipid source they wouldn't normally access or desire, we can achieve fitness effects and also membrane biophysical property effects. And the idea is we now have a tool where we can tune membrane complexity and also membrane properties and force cells to adapt to lipids that they otherwise wouldn't incorporate into their membranes. And I know I'm a minute over, so I'll stop there, but thank you.
Isaac, could you grow the cells on longer fatty acids?
Yes, to a degree.
And what's the effect of that on phenotype?
That's more work that Natasha did. They're happiest with 16 to 18 carbons. And so you see when you force them to only go on longer fatty acids, you do see a hit to the growth rate. I haven't looked at biophysical properties. I'm not sure if Natasha has.
Do most bacteria live off C16, C18?
Mostly, yes. Complex membranes, you will have more, larger diversity in acyl chain composition, but we've found that from work done on these cells previously, specifically palmitic acid and oleic acid are the two most abundant. That's 16.0 and 18.1. And then you get to 16.1 and 18.0. But so sort of keeping those two lengths and then playing around with where the saturation or unsaturation is by far the most abundant.
Do we as mammals produce those fatty acids?
Yes, and actually one of the reasons that Mycoplasma and Syn3 make excellent model systems is that they can't actually modify their fatty acids, whereas eukaryotic organisms and humans can. So we can actually change the length and saturation of our fatty acids. And that's one of our remodeling responses, whereas these organisms cannot. So we have a higher diversity while they're limited by what they're fed or what they scavenge, essentially.
Do plants use a different sizes? And I'm thinking about maybe Anne's talk in a few minutes, but I'm thinking about, does Mesoplasma use a different size fatty acids?
That's one of the features they can tune, yes. It's the sterol or sterol analog used, length of fatty acid, and also lipid head group and type of lipid. So sphingomyelin, for example, are often longer.